A friend's advice helped me understand my husband. I was convinced that work was ruining our marriage. Then my friend shared an opinion I hadn't considered. Her perspective gave me a deeper understanding of his choices. The conversation changed the direction of our relationship. The morning sun shone gently over Rosewood Garden. Colorful flowers swayed in the breeze, and birds sang from the tall trees that lined the walking paths. It was the kind of peaceful place where people came to forget their worries. Emma walked slowly through the garden carrying a small handbag. Her expression was thoughtful, almost troubled. She stopped near a fountain and looked around until she spotted her best friend, Sarah, sitting on a wooden bench beneath a flowering tree. "Emma," Sarah called, waving. Emma smiled and walked over. "Sorry I'm late," she said as she sat down. "No problem," Sarah replied. "You look tired. Is everything okay?" Emma hesitated. "Honestly? I'm not sure." Sarah immediately noticed something was bothering her. "Tell me." Emma stared at the fountain for a moment. "It's David." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Your husband?" Emma nodded. "What happened?" "Nothing happened exactly. That's the problem." Sarah looked confused. Emma sighed. "His job is taking over our lives." The two friends sat quietly while a gentle breeze moved through the garden. Sarah waited patiently. Emma continued. "When David first became an architect, he loved his work. He was passionate about designing buildings and creating beautiful spaces. I admired that about him." Sarah nodded. "I remember. He used to talk about his projects all the time." "Exactly," Emma said. "Back then, he had balance. He worked hard, but he still made time for us." "And now?" Emma laughed softly. "Now he's always working." She explained that David had recently become the lead architect for a major development project. The promotion came with prestige. It came with more money. It came with recognition. But it also came with endless responsibilities. "He leaves before I wake up," Emma said. Sarah listened carefully. "And he comes home after I'm already asleep." "That's rough." Emma nodded. "Sometimes I feel like I live alone." Sarah looked toward the colorful flower beds. "Have you talked to him?" "Many times." "And?" "He says it's temporary." Sarah smiled slightly. "The famous temporary excuse." Emma laughed. "Exactly." The friends sat in silence for a few moments. Nearby, children chased butterflies between the flowers. An elderly couple walked hand in hand along a stone path. The peaceful scene made Emma feel even more emotional. "Do you know what hurts the most?" she asked. "What?" "He isn't doing anything wrong." Sarah looked at her. Emma continued. "He's not ignoring me because he doesn't care." "Then why?" "Because he wants to give us a better future." Sarah nodded slowly. That made the situation much harder. If David were selfish, the answer would be simple. But he wasn't. He was sacrificing his present happiness for what he believed would be a better future. The problem was that Emma wasn't sure how much of the present they could afford to lose. As the fountain continued to splash softly behind them, Sarah asked the question that would change everything. "Emma, are you happy?" Emma opened her mouth. Then she stopped. For the first time, she realized she didn't know the answer. Emma couldn't stop thinking about Sarah's words after leaving the garden. Working hard for your family is important. But if you're never with your family, what's the point? That sentence echoed in her mind for days. The following week wasn't any better. David continued leaving before sunrise and returning home late at night. One evening, Emma prepared his favorite dinner. She lit candles. She set the table. She even wore the blue dress he always complimented. Then her phone buzzed. David sorry. Emergency meeting. Don't wait for me. Emma stared at the message. Something inside her finally broke. The food grew cold on the table. The candles burned out. And Emma cried herself to sleep. A few days later, David's mother invited them to a family gathering. For the first time in months, Emma thought they might spend time together. Unfortunately, David cancelled at the last minute. Again. When Emma arrived alone, his mother immediately noticed. "Where's David?" "Work." His father sighed. His sister rolled her eyes. "He missed the last gathering too." Emma forced a smile. The evening became uncomfortable. Some family members defended David. Others criticized him. His father finally spoke. "You know, when I was his age, I worked 2 jobs." Everyone nodded. Then he added something unexpected. "But I still came home." The room fell silent. Emma didn't know whether to agree or stay quiet. That night she returned home feeling worse than before. David was still at work. His office jacket hung over a chair. His laptop sat open on the dining table. Emma wasn't trying to snoop. She simply wanted to close it. But then an email caught her attention. The subject line read, "Confidential Project Review." Normally she would have looked away. But one sentence froze her. Failure could result in contract termination. Emma's heart raced. Contract termination? She continued reading. The project David was leading was in serious trouble. Millions of dollars were at risk. Deadlines had been missed. Several team members had resigned. Upper management was threatening major consequences. Suddenly everything started making sense. The late nights. The stress. The exhaustion. The constant phone calls. David wasn't chasing success. He was trying to prevent disaster. Emma quickly closed the laptop. For the first time in months, she saw the situation differently. The next morning she decided to confront him. Not angrily. Honestly. When David finally came home that evening, he looked exhausted. Dark circles sat beneath his eyes. His shoulders drooped. He barely looked like himself. "David." He looked up. "We need to talk." His expression immediately became defensive. "I'm sorry. I know I've been busy." "No." Emma shook her head. "Tell me what's really happening." The room became quiet. David looked away. For several seconds he said nothing. Then he finally sat down. "The project is failing." Emma listened. "The company trusted me with the biggest project of my career." His voice cracked slightly. "If it collapses, hundreds of people could lose their jobs." Emma stared at him. She had never heard this side of the story. "I didn't want to worry you. You should have told me." "I know." His eyes filled with emotion. For months he had carried the burden alone. And now it was finally spilling out. "I'm terrified, Emma." Those words shocked her. David never admitted fear. Never. Yet there he was. Looking completely broken. For the next few weeks, things improved slightly. Not because David worked less. But because they started communicating again. Emma understood the pressure he faced. David understood the loneliness she felt. For a while, it seemed like things might get better. Then everything changed. One rainy Friday evening, Emma received a phone call. The caller was David's coworker. His voice sounded urgent. "Emma, you need to come to the office." Her stomach dropped. "What happened?" "It's David." The line went silent. Emma rushed out the door. Her heart pounded the entire drive. When she arrived, she found David sitting alone in a conference room. His face was pale. His hands trembled. The project had officially failed. The company had cancelled the contract. Millions had been lost. And David was being blamed. As Emma sat beside him, he whispered something she would never forget. "I gave everything to this job." Tears filled his eyes. And it still wasn't enough. For the first time, Emma realized the truth. The job that had taken him away from his family had also taken away his happiness. And the worst part? The biggest challenge of their lives was only beginning. The weeks following the project's collapse were some of the hardest Emma and David had ever faced. For years, David had built his identity around his career. He wasn't just an architect. His work was his pride. His purpose. His proof that all his sacrifices meant something. Now that foundation had cracked. Every morning he sat at the kitchen table staring at his coffee. Every evening he seemed lost in thought. The confident man Emma had married was disappearing. In his place stood someone defeated. Someone who questioned every decision he had ever made. Emma tried to stay positive. But the pressure was affecting her too. The expensive lifestyle they had built suddenly felt fragile. Unexpected bills began arriving. Their savings started shrinking. And neither of them knew what would happen next. One afternoon David received a call from a former coworker named Michael. The conversation lasted nearly an hour. When David hung up, his face looked pale. "What's wrong?" Emma asked. David sat down slowly. Then he revealed something shocking. The project hadn't failed because of poor leadership. It had failed because someone inside the company had been secretly sabotaging it. Emma stared at him. "What?" David nodded. Several important reports had been altered. Critical deadlines had been hidden from management. Project data had mysteriously disappeared. And according to Michael, there was evidence pointing toward one person. David's direct supervisor. The very man who had blamed David for everything. Emma couldn't believe it. Neither could David. For months he had carried guilt for a disaster that might not have been his fault. Over the following weeks, more information surfaced. Former employees began speaking up. Internal investigations were launched. Emails were uncovered. Documents were reviewed. The truth slowly emerged. David had been used as a scapegoat. Upper management needed someone to blame. And because he was the public face of the project, he became the easiest target. When the final report was released, David's name was cleared. The supervisor responsible was terminated. Several executives resigned. The news should have felt like a victory. Instead, David sat quietly at home. Emma looked at him. "Aren't you happy?" David thought for a moment. Then he shook his head. "I lost 2 years of my life trying to save something that was never mine to carry." Emma didn't know how to answer. Because deep down, she knew he was right. A month later another challenge arrived. David received an offer from a prestigious company. The salary was incredible. The position was even more important than his previous role. Friends told him he would be crazy to refuse. Family members encouraged him to accept immediately. Even former coworkers called to congratulate him. Everything pointed toward saying yes. Everything except one thing. The memory of what had happened before. That evening Emma and David sat together in the same garden where she had once spoken with Sarah. The flowers were blooming again. The fountain still sparkled in the sunlight. And for the first time in a long time, neither of them was in a hurry. David broke the silence. "If I take this job, things could become exactly the way they were before." Emma looked at him carefully. You know I would support whatever decision you make. I know. But. She smiled softly. But I miss my husband. The words hung in the air. Not angry. Not accusing. Just honest. David looked toward the fountain. For years he had believed success meant climbing higher and higher. More money. More recognition. More responsibility. Now he wasn't so sure. Several days later he made his decision. He turned down the prestigious offer. Everyone thought he was crazy. Instead, he accepted a position with a smaller company. The salary was lower. The title wasn't as impressive. But the work-life balance was far better. Most importantly, he would finally have time for the people he loved. For the first time in years, David came home for dinner every night. He laughed more. He slept better. He smiled again. And little by little, the man Emma had fallen in love with returned. One evening nearly a year later, Emma met Sarah in the same garden. The two friends sat on the same bench beneath the flowering tree. Sarah smiled. "So, how's your husband doing?" Emma laughed. The exact same question that had started everything. This time her answer was different. "He's happy." Sarah smiled. "And you?" Emma looked across the garden where David was walking toward them carrying 2 cups of coffee. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. For a moment, everything felt peaceful. Everything felt right. "I'm happy too." David reached the bench and handed Emma a cup. Their eyes met. No deadlines. No late-night meetings. No endless stress. Just 2 people who had survived a difficult chapter together. As they walked through the garden hand in hand, Emma realized something important. Success wasn't measured by promotions. It wasn't measured by money. And it certainly wasn't measured by titles. Success was having someone beside you when life became difficult. Success was finding your way back to the people you loved. And sometimes, the greatest achievement isn't building a career. It's building a life worth coming home to. Our team is working really hard to bring you the best stories every day. Creating these videos takes a lot of time, effort, and resources, and your support truly means everything to us. If you enjoyed this story, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to support our journey. Your appreciation helps us keep creating more emotional and entertaining content and Reddit stories and manhwa recaps every day. Stay tuned for more amazing stories coming soon. Thank you for being part of our community.